Why do we incarnate?
For soul expansion, soul wisdom, lessons to learn, to experience, to be the universe experiencing itself. I know I've had someone come through before as a spirit and they said, I had a resting life and I just came back to enjoy because the ones before were so poor, so negative. And so I think our lifetimes are just these valuable opportunities for experience and wisdom.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. I'm delighted to have Ginette Biro on the show today. Ginette survived a near-death experience, and she's a medium who communicates with spirits. I'm looking forward to learning about Ginette's journey and if her NDE gave her any new insights about the spirit world. It's sure to be a fun conversation. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Ginette, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun. I'm so looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I got questions for you, girl. Sheets of them.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
You were born a medium. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, honestly, I was born retrospectively. I could say, yes, it makes sense. Did I understand that when I was 5? No, I didn't understand what was happening to me. I didn't understand why I could feel people in my room, but they weren't there. And the thing is I didn't grow up in a family that had mediums or anything like that, or psychics. I could just, and not that it wasn't talked about, but it wasn't really relevant. And so I didn't really have a resource or someone to say, don't worry, you're not crazy, kiddo, you know? And so, I mean, for me, it was just this progression of like, you know, why would I know when my mom was hiding chocolate bars in the upper cabinet when I'm not in the kitchen? Why would I know that, right? Like I would know these things or feel these things. And my gifts really kind of evolved over the years into, you know, when I finally started to see spirit in my teens and hear them and then by the age of 20 is when I decided not to be terrified and realized something significant had been occurring my whole life. So it was this retrospect that makes so much sense now, but at the time was just really whirly.
I believe everybody comes in with the ability, and it's just a matter of developing and enhancing it. And little children don't know that they're not supposed to be seeing or feeling those things until somebody says, oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not really real. And then they learn to shut it down. But it's been my experience, and I'd love to hear if it's been yours as well, as an adult, where little children come up with this stuff that there's no way they could have known. Like, you knew where your mom was hiding the chocolate bars. And the adults are afraid of it. That's why they tell them it's not real. Have you encountered that with your own children, or perhaps hearing about it through other children?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I remember asking my mom very like specific questions when I was 6 and 7 that I remember noticing how it would kind of throw her a little bit, because it would either be so deep or so much more mature for my age. And it was just these little pieces of like questions I had. And I've noticed that in my kids, and especially my daughter. My daughter has come in as such a wise little soul. Like she's come in with so much consciousness that's already available to her. And even from the age of 5, I remember her asking me these questions of like, why souls don't remember when they come into this life, or, you know, why is it that people don't believe that there is other life out in the universe? Why wouldn't they just know that, right? Like little 5-year-old, little 6-year-old version of her asking these deep questions. And it just, I find it so interesting to see how the consciousness level has changed in children and what they're coming in with. And I also think parents are becoming less fearful and more embracing of what their children are doing. So that's changing what's available for them as well. Because I remember when I was younger talking about certain things that I would see or know or feel, and people would just be like, what are you talking about? that's not what we talk about, or that's not the right thing, or you're crazy, or sometimes I couldn't even explain why I was afraid of something. Like I didn't know or didn't have the language to say, I'm feeling an energy of something. I don't know if it's an entity or the environment, but something is not right here. I need to figure it out. Like that's what I would say now. At the time, it just would send me into a tizzy of like panic, and people would wonder what the heck's wrong with her. Right. So I'm grateful for the awakening and the evolution that is supporting more children nowadays than when we were growing up.
I think it's going back to supporting children, because I think that's only originated in the past maybe 150 years as we've become more well educated, because every culture has some type of mediumship, whether they're reading tea leaves or tarot cards or prayer beads or whatever. And as we've become more well educated, it has been something that we say, okay, well, if there isn't proof right now for it, then it must not be real. Well, that's crazy. Just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean something isn't real. And furthermore, I agree with you that each generation comes in more enlightened. And we as parents and as grandparents at my age, we are, I think a lot of us are more spiritual than ensconced in the dogma of religion. And more of the spiritual fosters us understanding this. I laugh. I always say it cracks me up how a baby who can't talk in sentences yet, perhaps isn't even walking yet, knows how to use an iPhone or an iPad. How's that work? They know how to use it better than I do, right? So they're just building on the generations that have come before them. And we've done the same thing. My generation discovered things that your generation built on, and now your kids are doing the same thing. I know that you've had a near-death experience. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So this happened in 2019. And prior to my near-death experience, I was already comfortable in my mediumship and working as a medium, and had talked to many, many souls who'd crossed over. And so I felt I had a very good understanding of consciousness. And I don't mean that in a cocky way either, but I felt comfortable in what I was in. It wasn't scary anymore. But what was so interesting is when I had my near-death experience, that just, like whatever door was open, maybe it was like a front door, well, like the barn doors opened with my near-death experience. And so this happened, like I said, in 2019, and I had been hemorrhaging quite severely from my monthly cycles. And it finally got to a point where I was going to have a surgery because there was no options at that point. And I remember leading up to the surgery, I had a couple people mention different things of like fear for my wellness in the surgery, and maybe I shouldn't do it because I was too sick. I had somebody else tell me, they're like, I think you're going to die. And I just had this knowing that I needed to do this, but it was like a calm, just kind of move out of my way and let me do this kind of a feeling. And everyone was expressing their concerns from their heart space, right? Like I hold space for that, but I knew I needed to do this. And I remember the day of my surgery, I felt so much joy. And I mean, you could attribute that to just having been so sick and stuff, but there was this joy level within me of like, I say, like, you know, that feeling when kids are waiting to go down the water slide and they're sitting in the slide and they're ready and they're waiting for that lifeguard to give them the nod for just fun times. That was a feeling I had as they were wheeling me into the OR. And I've had surgery before, and I'm not usually so joyous for it. And so when they put me under, I remember just this feeling of like, high five, I'll see you later. And I suddenly appeared on the other side, and I knew it instantly where I was. On the other side, my bare feet on the most beautiful green grass that you can imagine. And I knew I was on the other side because it was more like, it was a knowing, but it was also more visceral than any other experience I'd ever had, from an out-of-body experience to any of the mediumship sessions. Because in mediumship sessions, I always feel like I'm sort of looking through a window or gazing upon something in what they show me. Whereas this was all of me felt there. And so I was bare feet on the grass, and I could zoom into any blade of grass if I wanted to, just by looking at it, and then zoom right back out. And it was so natural. And everything about the energy there was like perfection and bliss and harmony, and not bliss in excess. Like, I think sometimes we think blissful states here is like an excess of something, but this was just harmony. And so I was walking up this hill, and the sky was just this beautiful summer blue. And I happened upon this like picnic kind of barbecue scene. And it was all of my family and friends that had passed from this lifetime and beyond. And it was just the happiest, most beautiful reunion with all of them. And I remember just giving everybody a hug and being like, what have you been up to? Where are you at now? And it didn't matter if they were lifetimes ago or from this lifetime. I had time to spend with every single person. And it just was this amazing amount of time, although the time wasn't the same, because I felt like I spent all day into the late afternoon there. And then after I'd spent all this time reconnecting and reunions and laughter and all of this, my grandmother, who was in spirit, came and took me then to this other place. And she took me to what I call the room of the blueprints, because in this white room, it was all white, and outside of the windows was where the universe was creating itself, is the only way I can explain it. And in this room, there was this big boardroom table, and my guides and my council were there, and they rolled out these blueprints. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, they're like literal blueprints. Like, these look like blueprints on Earth, right? And
like an architectural drawing.
Yes. Yeah. Except for more simplistic, but it was blue. And down the center of this blueprint was this iridescent line, kind of like when you see on a subway, you know, like the subway stops and stuff that have like the main line and then the different stops. There was this line that was still pulsating with this like iridescent energy. So I knew that although I was on the other side, I was also still alive. Like, there was life in that line. And we went through a life review. And so with my guide, we went through everything I had done up until that point. And at that point is when they then asked me if I wanted to stay or go back. And I remembered being like, oh, well, I want to go back. And they were like, okay, well, if you want to go back with what's remaining of your life, which was about like 6 inches long, but I can't see past my guide's shoulder in my memory of how long was the beginning part, so I can't gauge it. Anyways, with this last amount, they were like, you can change some things around if you would like. And so when I looked at it, there was like, it looked like different fuses kind of in a fuse box in those juncture points. And each of those represented like kind of life journey destiny points that we, you know, design before we come into this life. And so I was like, I can just rearrange them? And they're like, yeah. And so they're like, you'll remember everyone, or you won't remember any of them except for the first one. And so I remember taking the first fuse out, and I remember holding it and being like, it's really this simple? And they're like, yes. And I took the fuse out of chronic illness, because I had always been dealing with chronic illness in some form. I was just known as like that canary in the coal mine person in my family, that if anyone was going to get something, it was going to be me. And I got to take that fuse out and then put a different one back in. And then I did that with a couple other ones along the way. And so in doing that, after I rearranged those, they asked me again, they said, would you like to stay or do you want to go back? And it was interesting because in this moment, I also got to have a conversation with my higher self. And my higher self looked very much like I do now, although I knew it was my higher self. And I could also experience my higher self talking to me both at the same time, and it made absolute sense there. And I remember hearing and experiencing the absolute love and joy that my higher self had for my lifetime, for the life experience I'd had, and how amazing and how much our higher selves value our human life, like how important it is. And I was like, well, no, I want to go back. And so they're like, okay, if you're going to go back, because they said it would be very easy. It would be as simple as a switch to just have my heart fail on the operating table and it would be done. They're like, it's that easy if you want to stay. And I was like, no, I want to go back. And so there was like an agreement that if it wasn't like, it's like a promise, I guess. I promised that if I went back, I would share what I had learned and I would continue to share messages. And instead of just doing mediumship kind of like just through word of mouth and not really talking about what I do, I would just be who I am. And so it was interesting is in that moment, once I said, yes, I'm coming back, these next things happened so fast. But essentially, I heard the nurse in the recovery room say, Ginette, are you awake? And I could still see my grandmother in spirit with me. And I felt my soul, my spirit just go like, phoom, back into my body in a split second. And then I felt and heard my higher self speak through me. And I am not someone who's clear when I come out of surgery. I'm quite funny. Medicine in me is funny. We'll put it that way. And my higher self said to the nurse right away, like I whooped into my body, my eyes were still closed. And I said to her, I need you to write these 4 things down. It's very important. I need you to write them down on a piece of paper, fold it up and put it in my hand. And so she said, okay, honey, what is it you want to say? And I gave her these 4 kind of words, phrases that don't really make sense to anybody else, but they would be these key pieces to remind me of everything I experienced. And I had her do that. And it was after that she asked, how is your pain? Do you want any pain meds? And they gave me pain meds. And so they wheeled me into recovery. And I remember being able to open like one eye at this point. And my mom came in and I gave her the paper. And I said, you can't lose this. I need this. It's so important. And so then a couple days later, once I was home and there was no more pain meds in my body, my guide said, it's time to look at that paper. You need to look at it. And so I remember I got it out and I read those 4 things and then it just flooded back to me. And I'd remembered pieces of it already. I knew I went somewhere. I knew something was different. I knew I had been on the other side because everything about being back on this planet after was unbelievable. And then it all flooded back to me. And they specifically had me write those things down so that I wouldn't question the validity of my experience if I had talked about it after I'd had pain meds. Because I'm a very kind of sciencey, spiritual person. And so it needed to be clean. And yeah. And so then the story came through and it made a lot of sense. And it took a while to integrate being back here after. I think it took me about 1.5 years to really merge with being back. But that's my NDE kind of in a nutshell.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah,
You got lots of stuff. I'm writing down questions here, so I remember to ask them too. First of all, the fuses. Did they, when you removed that first fuse and you put another one in its place to eradicate the chronic illness, was it a fuse that you moved from further down the line, or was it just like spare fuses over to the side for other things? And did you know what you were replacing and what you were substituting with those fuses?
That's a great question. It was a different fuse, so not one that was down the line, but it was one of like better health, like general health. I'd removed the need for chronic health lessons. I learned a lot through my chronic health issues of surrendering, of asking for help. I was always someone that was like, I'll do it myself. I can do it myself. Right. So that was a big journey for me. And so I knew I was putting in something better. And I remember thinking like, okay, guys, yeah, we'll see. Because I'm the one that's been living this chronic health thing where Ginette gets sick all the time. So we'll see. And I remember for a good year after noticing how I wasn't getting sick. I didn't get sick. If my kids got sick, I wouldn't get sick. And like the amount of things I didn't get sick from was unbelievable. And I remember it took a good year for me to really realize, okay, I'm not a sick person anymore. I don't need to identify as a sick person anymore because that's not needed in my journey. And so I still do get sick sometimes, for sure. But I am often quite healthier than a bunch of people in my house. So
okay,
it's so neat.
So do you remember if there was perhaps a bowl or a basket or a container of fuses, or did you just think, I want to eradicate, I don't want to be sick anymore, and that fuse materialized? Do you remember that kind of detail?
No,
or
I
can you
just
go back and get
remember,
it?
I just remember being able to pick up a different one. Maybe, I mean, it could have been that it was offered as a different one, but it was like there was an alternate option. And so I was able to pick that alternate option.
Cool. All right. Yeah. The choice to go back. I was scribbling while you were writing, and I'm trying to read my own scribbles here. The choice to go back. There have been, who knows how many NDEs. There are lots of them every year that are reported, and I think way more that are not reported by people. Do you believe everybody has that choice? I've heard people that have experienced NDEs say, I was told by my grandfather or Jesus or whomever that it wasn't my time. I was supposed to go back. How do you think that works?
So that seems to be the most common thing. I haven't come across many people at all that chose to want to come back. I've heard the same as you. Most of the time they're made to come back. I don't know why that is, and I can't say I know exactly why mine was different compared to theirs. I just know that the choice was so inherently my own because I was shown how it could be ended or how it could continue. And so I don't know if it was to be able to allow me to bring that information forward of how it can be sometimes, or maybe there was a full completion of that first phase of my life. Or perhaps I was ready to take on a whole second phase that maybe would have been brought into the next lifetime. I don't know exactly, but I just know that I felt no pressure to stay or to come back, that it was 100% up to me. And I mean, I had reasons to want to come back for my family and my kids, but I also, when I saw the way that my higher self valued this lifetime so much, it was like, why would I give up on what has already been created? Why would I not go back and work from that point?
Interesting. Okay. I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world and former manufacturer of surgical devices. So I've been in the operating room a lot in my 30-year career before I was doing this full time. And I have been in surgeries where things did not go well. Probably the most poignant one was I was in a surgery for a abdominal aortic aneurysm, and it blew in the operating room, and there was this fountain of blood that went flying up in the air. And I watched the surgeon save this guy's life. Having said all that, did your surgeon allude, or in the medical notes, in the surgery notes, was anything noted that there was anything amiss? Did your blood pressure go wonky? Did your pulse rate, any of that, any complications that were noted in the surgery notes post-op?
No, nothing that I've seen. I haven't seen the post-op notes though in any way, but nobody ever mentioned anything. And no, nothing.
Yeah, interesting. That would be interesting for you to read that.
I know. It'd be curious.
Yeah, because you can get copies. We're all have privy to our own medical records, for heaven's sakes. We need to, but that would be interesting. I'm hearing from spirit that there wasn't anything that went amiss, that everything went smoothly. And it sounds like your doctor didn't allude to anything being problematic during your procedure.
Not that I've heard, no. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And then what were the 4 things that you had the nurse write down? What were the 4 things that they wanted you to remember?
Yeah. So they were like keywords for me to remember phases of it, right? So like one, it was Great Baba, tree roots, time to entwine, and I went far, right? So it doesn't really relate for anybody else, but those were like 4 different phases of my experience. And when I read them, it's like they unlocked everything I needed to remember of the whole experience. And it was just this like instantaneous flooding of everything. And I remember I was at my parents' house at the time after the surgery, as my husband had the kids out while I was recovering. And I remember when it all flooded in, I was like, I need to tell you guys a story. And so my mom actually captured a picture of the first time I told them the story in the backyard. And then after that, I sat down and I wrote my book about it all. So,
mm-hmm. And how was it received by your family?
Really well. And it was my dad, who has a brain quite like mine in many ways. He was like, wow, so that really happened, hey? And I was like, yeah, it did. And he's like, and you didn't have any pain meds at that time? I'm like, no, Dad, that's why I had the paper. And they were really open to it. And yeah.
Interesting. A little different from when you were a kid, it sounds like, when you were coming up with all this wild stuff that you were seeing and talking about. Is there anything that has changed in your abilities as a medium since you had your NDE? Do you believe that your skills have maybe been heightened or improved?
Yeah, definitely. So it opened up a faster communication, and also like a higher reach in frequency. And so I've noticed that in addition to connecting with deceased people or spirit guides, I've also been able to connect to much higher levels of consciousness and channel some beings as well. Not some beings, but specifically the 3 guides of the light that I channel. And a lot of that, and how fast it opened, and how fast I noticed almost like the brain circuitry in my head moved after my surgery, took a while to adjust to as well. And even like my ability to hear energy, not just feel it, but almost like hear it, changed. So there was a lot that changed for me after the surgery as well, which is what really, like when I say the barn doors flew open, they really did in a lot of different ways. And the amount of spirit that I would see on a daily basis moving around the house, or, would be different. What would maybe happen maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks randomly when I'm not tuned in, would become like a daily event. And so it really did change the influx of energy that would come through. And it was something I had to create new boundaries with and ground into and adjust to, for sure.
When you say you're able to reach higher levels of consciousness, what does that mean?
It would be, a greater ability, say, in astral traveling or astral projection.
Explain what that is to people that are listening that have no clue what that is.
Okay, so that's like being able to propel your consciousness somewhere outside of your own body, to be able to see something, whether it be on this planet or in a different dimension, a different planet, a different galaxy. And with that also came the ability to communicate with different beings in different dimensions, different galaxies, not of this planet. And tuning into that and trying to bring that into my daily reality is what took a lot of time to kind of integrate and understand. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. In a galaxy far, far away is what I'd like to say, like from Star Wars. Because I believe George Lucas channeled all that stuff, because I've seen it when I've been with clients and I think, this looks like something out of a Star Wars movie. And there are things that I see that then I'll see later in something else. I've seen that before in working with a client. And so maybe we were on the same planet in the same, I don't know, center on the planet or something along those lines. Do you turn your abilities on and off, or do you just walk around and you see spirits and energies and things like that? How does that work for you?
I try to be okay. Do I turn them on and off? Yes, in a sense, but they are also always with me. So they can get my attention at any point, and I can choose whether that's an appropriate time to tune in further or not. It also depends on what's coming through. So, I mean, I don't walk around a grocery store tuning in and feeling people, because that's too busy. That's too overwhelming for me. I can't do it. Before I sit in client sessions, I do properly tune in so that I can be the most available in their session. But yes, at nighttime, if I'm watching TV or just relaxing, spirit will come through. I'll sometimes see them move through the room, or they'll talk to me if I'm doing dishes or I'm driving. My guides love to come in and have a chat. So it is very much a part of my life on the daily, but I do kind of turn up the volume and turn down the volume for sure. And then there's times too where I just, I take a break for a little bit and I just do very human things to recalibrate. Because I think sometimes if we spend so much time tuned into those higher energies all the time, then we kind of get pulled out of our reality of presence here. And I think sometimes it's nice to just be human without the interactions on the other side. So try to balance it out.
I agree. We're here to live the human experience, and then we can access spirit when we need it to help guide us. But I agree with you. I do laundry and fold laundry and cook dinner and go to the grocery store and all that jazz as well. What have your spirit guides, have they been guiding you on a different path, like before your NDE and then after your NDE? Have you noticed a definitive shift in how or to where or to whom you're being guided since your NDE, especially since you were saying that you can reach higher levels of frequency now? Are you noticing that they're guiding you in different ways? And have your spirit guides changed, or have they remained the same?
Have they changed? Yes, some of them have. There has been like a change of guard for sure. There are still a few that are the same, but definitely many new ones that kind of work with the energy signature that I am now. And what I do has changed as well. So before, like I said, I would spend a lot of my time connecting with past loved ones and spirit guides and bringing messages through. Whereas now I find a lot of my work tends to be on sharing knowledge with people of, say, how my guides will explain to me the consciousness of water and how that consciousness can communicate with us in different ways, or how the energy body works and we can awaken dormant frequencies in our bodies. Like, I find my guides have been bringing through a lot of information to try and put it into a very palatable, tangible way for us to bring in new ideas. And none of it is to convince anyone of anything, but rather just be a resource of knowledge of things if people are interested, right? Things about consciousness and ascension and awakening and galaxies and that kind of stuff. So I find that expansion of knowledge has been about sharing what I get for those that wish to listen.
Well, I agree. It's been my experience, same thing. And the more I do this, and I think some of it just comes with age too, with wisdom, that I don't feel like I need to convince anybody of anything. If this is something that they resonate on the topic and they want to know more, great. If they don't, we can talk about something else. Doesn't matter. And the need to not have to convince somebody of something is really freeing, I find. Do you find the same thing?
In the beginning of my journey, and I'm not sure if this happened for you, but when it was first really opening up and I was trying to make sense of it, by trying to convince other people was also to then reassure myself that what I was experiencing was in fact real and valid. right? And so to be able to prove something of like, you know, your grandfather's here and he's showing me his old shoes that connected to horses, and did he ride a horse in this cowboy song? Like, you know, how spirit brings through these things, to have these validators and the person say yes, then I would be like, see, I'm not losing it. I'm not crazy, right? In my mind, I would be thinking like, ha, there. Whereas I completely agree now. Like it's so real for me, as I imagine it is for you. It's so real and it's so a part of your reality. And the fact that we know everybody has their own reality, and I'm not going to convince anyone of mine, but I'll share it if someone wants to hear. But I have no need to convince anyone of it. So it is very freeing. I find it very, very freeing.
Well, and I believe too that spirit's going to give us signs and symbols and things to give to their loved ones, because their loved ones, this may be their first experience at talking with their loved one in heaven. And it may be that that's what they need to give them a little bit of a step in the direction of exploring this further, to give them that tangible proof of what's going on. And I always end up saying, with the caveat, okay, future events are fluid, be open to how this is going to show up. And if they tell us this is your sign, it may make sense to you right now. It may make sense later when you think about it, or it may pertain to something that hasn't happened yet. And at the same time, be open to how it's going to show up. I had a client yesterday and we were talking with her deceased son in heaven. And she said, I don't feel like I'm able to connect with him. And I don't feel like I'm getting any information or signs from him. And he said for her just to look for the word mom, MOM. And I said, he's telling me to tell you to just look for the word mom. Now, be open. You may see that in a story that you're reading. You may see the word in an ad. You may see it on a billboard. You may see it in an Instagram post. Just be open. And she was laughing. And I said, what? And she said, before he died, he had cancer and was sick for several years. And she said, before he died, the month before he died, he insisted that we go to a tattoo parlor, and the word mom was tattooed on my forearm, and he paid for it. And I said, well, so he's saying every time you see the word mom, know he's with you. And she said, I never would have put those two together. I said, but that's why he chose that, because it's something that he knew that was easily accessible for you on your arm, for heaven's sakes. And also it's something that he wanted you to do, and he even paid for it. So I thought that was, and I, like you, I'm sure, I have thousands and thousands and thousands of examples like that. And it gives them so much peace and so much comfort that their loved ones are happy and healthy and whole and in heaven, and they're around them all the time, and that kind of a thing. I think it's interesting too how you're being led to spread this information on a broader scale. And I find that to be the case with me and with lots of other of our colleagues as well. And it seems to me that all of us working together are causing somewhat of a groundswell in this, because people are hearing you say the same thing that I'm saying, that other colleagues of ours are saying, and they're saying, okay, well, maybe there really is something
Totally.
to this. And it gives them the opportunity to really put down their guard and say, okay, well, I'm going to take a step and I'm going to explore this further. And then that just leads them into their own spirituality. What's a walk-in soul experience?
A walk-in soul is when you have, so a natal soul, if I start there, the natal soul is the soul that is connected to the one that is born, the body that is born. So that's the soul that is brought in, that will be the baby, grow through childhood into adulthood. And then at some point, there will be another soul, which is the walk-in, which is something that's already agreed upon before the incarnation happens in the first place. It's not a possession or anything, but they will do either like a soul braid or soul exchange, in which the walk-in soul will then kind of take over or completely take over, and the natal soul will leave to carry on whatever the soul mission is of that walk-in. And walk-in souls will do that because the whole journey of moving from a child in through adolescence into adulthood is a lot of time and a lot of kind of dormant time, if I put it that way. And there are a lot of souls that want to come in straight into action. And so it's easier for them to do a walk-in versus being a natal soul. And at the same time, there are many souls who will make this agreement with a walk-in and be like, hey, I'll be the natal soul because there's some aspects that I really want to work on as a child. And so I'll come in first. Once I'm done that part, then we can essentially kind of trade spots and you can carry on. And so that's a very simple, rudimentary way of explaining something that has much more intricacy and delicacy to it. But yeah, there are more walk-in souls happening these days because of the raising consciousness on our planet.
What happens to the natal soul if a walk-in soul comes in?
So the natal soul will usually cross over and basically go back to the other side. They can also sometimes take more of a back seat and allow the walk-in soul to come in for a period of time. And then sometimes the walk-in soul will then leave again and the natal soul will kind of carry on forward with some of the lessons from the walk-in soul. Other times I have seen on occasion where the natal soul will then move into another lifetime somewhere else without much soul time on the other side. That doesn't seem to be as common in my own experiences, but it's never, any partnership in a natal walk-in soul scenario is never leaving one in the dark or in the dust. There's always an agreement beforehand for this switch to take place.
Do you find that there's a personality change when there's a walk-in soul that comes in? Or is it frequent, or is it once in a blue moon? Or
walk-ins aren't as, I mean, they're becoming a bit more common. They're something that's talked about a little bit more now. I wouldn't say it's a 50% of the population, but it is becoming a bit more common. And there is definitely a personality change. That's definitely a thing. There's either a very big shift in career or focus, even sometimes health habits. Sometimes it can be as extreme, I've heard in some cases, as if somebody, was in a coma and the exchange happened there, they wake up from the coma and they have different understandings of their heritage or language ability or intellectual ability. Maybe they have a very engineering brain going into it and they come out and they're very artistic. So there's definite significant changes that occur in the walk-in. However, sometimes walk-ins can happen in the situation of a coma. Sometimes it can happen more sort of instantaneous. Most often, though, there's a bit of a blend that happens for a certain amount of time where it's like the natal soul shows the walk-in soul around for a little while, and then the walk-in soul takes over. So there's like an extreme phase of about a year or two, sometimes a little bit less, a little more, where this massive transformation happens for people. Now, that doesn't mean every massive transformation we have in our lifetime, though, is a walk-in. We also go through personal revolutionary times in our lives where we can grow and change and evolve. The walk-in is when it feels like a very different frequency altogether. And oftentimes walk-ins have a feeling that they are a walk-in. Or if they read up about it, there's a deep soul resonance of like, oh, I think this is me. I think this is what happened. This is that missing link that I didn't understand.
Is there a correlation between walk-ins and schizophrenics?
I've always wondered that too. And it's something I would actually love to study. I would love to study that at some point. Because sometimes I wonder if in fact, or even multiple personality disorders, if it's like, if there are different souls kind of being like a revolving door within that being, within that person, what facilitates that, I don't know. I don't know if there's a fracturing that happens. Again, it's something I would love to learn about in the future and do some more study on it.
Because from a medical research point of view, when somebody has a multiple personality disorder, is it really a disorder? Well, that's how it's been labeled by the medical community. They're like, somebody can be a diabetic in a different personality, and then they switch back to a subsequent personality and they're not diabetic anymore, and they can see that through blood work, or they have high blood pressure, or they've got something else and their vision changes or their whatever. And so I've often wondered that. And then the other thing that's interesting is I've heard stories throughout the years of, to your point earlier, when somebody's in a coma and they wake up and they speak a totally different language fluently, and they don't speak their native language. And everybody's saying, what's up with that? How does that work? So it seems that, especially from what you're saying, that multiple souls can inhabit a human body simultaneously. Is that what's been your experience?
It's a bit more of a rare occurrence in that regard. Like, I think the blend between one to another for a walk-in purpose, yes. Several, though, I don't think that's usually a predetermined walk-in scenario. Again, I think it's too difficult to just say it's A, B, or C. I think it's very individualized. But trying to put them into categories as such, I think in some cases it is possible. In walk-ins, there definitely is an exchange between one soul and another, sometimes shared for a little bit, where one kind of takes the back seat, one at the front. But always with a purpose on the soul level of the journey. Like, there's always a reason behind it. It's not just for fun or, hey, let's walk in and shove this soul out. It's not that. Like, we have our sovereignty over our soul connection with our body. It's a predetermined thing.
I get to know that it's not a common thing that multiple souls are in the same body at the same time. A couple of more questions on that, because I think this is a fascinating topic, and I'm glad that we stumbled onto it. When there is an organ transplanted, like the heart or kidneys or livers or something like that, oftentimes the organ recipient finds that their personality can shift, or they crave M&Ms, chocolate M&Ms or something, and they weren't into candy before. So I guess my question along those lines is, do you believe that organ donor's soul, or a fractal of that organ donor's soul, is in that organ that is transplanted into the recipient?
That's a great question. I have pondered that. I haven't met anyone to be able to have that conversation with them who's had those personal experiences. Scientifically, though, like, we know that the organs carry different cells that we could compare them to brain cells, right? Like, we know the heart carries emotion. We know the stomach carries emotion. We know organs carry more energy than just the organ job, right? And so I think in any transplant, we do take in the essence of somebody else in that organ. So I think that definitely happens. Do I think there can be a soul aspect that is connected? I would imagine there are, because our souls can definitely break into fragments or split into fragments. Is it also the energy of that person's spirit being bonded with the person carrying their heart for a while at that point too? It could be. Is it more prominent when, say, that recipient visits the donor's family? It could be the influence from the spirit coming around as well. So, I mean, again, that's something else I would love to dive into and have conversations with people who are recipients to see what's different.
Yeah, I've talked to a heart transplant patient before, and he says that there are a lot of things that changed in his personality. He in his 50s got the heart of a 19-year-old girl that died in a car accident, or that was injured in a car accident. She was a donor, and he's been with her family, and he said there are a multitude of things that changed in his preferences and his personality and things. And he said this was really interesting, I think, to me. He said they all enhanced his life experience and enhanced his personality. There wasn't anything negative, because we think, oh, somebody was snarky, had a snarky personality, and they were the heart donor. Does that mean I'm going to have a snarky personality? And I didn't get that from him, and that made sense to me as well. When do you believe the natal soul joins a person that's incarnating? Is it at the moment of conception? Is it when they're born? Have you gotten any guidance on that from your spirit guides?
I know that in the moment of conception, there is like an agreement. The soul is ready to come in. There is a conception that happens, and the soul is going to spend time connecting into the body at various times. I do know from my own experience that, the soul of a baby will come in and out during the pregnancy. And sometimes we feel like there's no movement happening, but the soul is spending time here connecting to the body, but also soul time on the other side as well. And I know I saw this a lot, even in my own pregnancies, and most specifically with my daughter. I would see her soul energy, which is this vibrant green, pop in and out of my belly at different times. And that was after I'd learned some things about this, and I was curious how it actually happened. And the most interesting thing with her was when I actually was in labor with her and had her, I saw her when I was actually having her, I saw her floating above in kind of the corner of the room. And I remember she came out, and I remember I looked at her soul energy and I saw it go into her body, and then she started crying. And it was so beautiful to see that, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's true, right? Like what they've been saying is true. What I've heard is true in many cases that a lot of people, a lot of souls will wait until the baby is fully born before they come in, to not experience the actual movement through the birth canal. However, I have talked to some people that have had vivid memories still of that experience of being born. And then in addition to that, though, I've also had experiences and also talked to people where after the baby is born, when they're still really little, they are still kind of coming and going, more of like an out of body, still connected to the body. But I remember one time nursing my son, and he was this blue energy. And I remember he popped out, and I could hear him so clearly saying, "Hi, Mom," and then popped back in. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So yes, I believe that there is a link and there is a connection. But I also think that like the true deep connection is once the baby is born, because they'll often wait to come in after, at least of how I've seen it. Yeah.
I have experienced many, many times in an exercise that I do with somebody who's dying and is afraid to let go because they've been inundated with, you're either going to go to heaven or you're going to go to hell. And they're afraid that they're going to go burn for eternity. And I say, well, everybody goes to heaven. And they go, yeah, well, I don't know that I believe you. You're not an authority on my church. Nevertheless, I'm able to separate my spirit, my soul. Part of it stays in my body and separate it and do kind of like a dress rehearsal. What's going to happen when they actually transition? And it gives them a lot of comfort. It's been my experience too that everybody's spirit does that. We do that when we sleep. We do astral travel, to what you alluded to earlier and defined for us. So I believe that's what's going on with all of that great explanation. How do you define the difference between destiny and our free will? Is it one and the same? Is there a differentiation between the two? What do you think's going on?
Yeah. This was something that I was shown when I got to see my blueprint. And this is one of the lessons that was deeply imparted to me in my whole near-death experience, was the blend of destiny and free will. And so like when we're creating our soul blueprint, I'll call it that, on the other side before we come in, we're creating these different junctures or fuses of lessons we want, these destiny pieces. Like, what does my soul need to experience in this lifetime based on where I've come from, what I've completed, what do I need to take on now? I'm going to put in these different destiny pieces that are going to help bring about, hopefully, this lesson, this awareness, this understanding through the learning. And then we roll up that blueprint and we head on in to Earth. And it is in our free will of how we choose to deal with those each and every time they come up that dictates how quickly we move through those destiny pieces. And so the way that they explained it to me is like, we have a river design, right? We have a certain meandering river design of our destiny, but we're given a boat. And then with that boat, our river is flowing this way, but we can spend our gasoline going back and forth, side to side. We can go upriver if we want. The free will is how we maneuver the destiny points that we've put in for ourselves. And so we can choose to refuse them. We can. That's our free will. We can choose in any given moment to dig deep and learn anything and everything we can from that moment and move through it. But we put those destiny pieces in, and we also get to choose as the human being what we want to do when we confront them. That free will piece is always huge and front and center in our experience.
I agree. Why do we incarnate?
For soul expansion, soul wisdom, lessons to learn, to experience, to be the universe experiencing itself. I think we incarnate onto Earth specifically for the experience of destiny and polarity, emotion. Humans are very emotional, which is something that is both beautiful and challenging, but through emotions, we get such deep lessons and learning. And so that I really feel we incarnate when we're ready to take on a new experience, when we want to learn something new. We come into a lifetime to do that for the most part. I mean, that's very general. I think I've come across some people who come in for the joy, and they have like a resting lifetime where they don't gain a ton of wisdom and knowledge, but they come in because they're like, you know what, I've done 4 lifetimes of big challenging things. Instead of staying on the other side, I'm going to go back, but I just want to enjoy the fruits of humanity. And so that might be the person that lives till they're 105 and they smoke and they drink and they never have health issues and they're always financially abundant and they travel everywhere. And you think, what is with that? I know I've had someone come through before as a spirit, and they said, I had a resting life and I just came back to enjoy because the ones before were so poor, so negative. And so I think our lifetimes are just these valuable opportunities for experience and wisdom.
Well said. What a delight you are. You are just full of wisdom and information, and you're so eloquent, and you do such a great job of communicating all this woo-woo, spiritual stuff in understandable languaging. So what a treat to get to talk with you today. How can people learn more about you and your work?
They can find me at avalonspirit.com. That's our main hub. And otherwise, I'm on YouTube as Ginette Biro Medium. I do lots of information there. The Ginette Biro podcast, social media. Yeah.
Okay. All righty, everybody. That's it for this time. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Canada, too, where Ginette is. Thanks for joining us. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.